Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the Layman's Law School, where three Southern gentlemen lawyers sit around and discuss the legal issues of the day, hopefully in layman's terms as much as we can, so that you can know and understand what you're seeing in the actual news. Today, we're going to be talking about murder and cover-up in Massachusetts. Reed's going to lead us in today's discussion, but
which he should, because he's been noticeably absent
I
would say lately.
Absolutely.
You know, life takes on all kind of forms. That's all you can say.
Well, like we always do at this time, it is Friday. We had a good week. We're gonna
long week, tough week, but a good week.
I don't even have a beer.
Oh,
punish
sorry.
each other.
I apologize, Johnny.
God almighty.
I knew it. Let me get my briefcase out.
A briefcase. Yeah, if you see Reed with a oddly shaped briefcase, 50-50 chance that's a
that it's not his laptop.
No, it's a 95% chance, brother.
Okay. All right. Well,
cheers, boys. Happy Friday. I just spent about 7 hours with elementary school kids, so this beer is well deserved.
Yeah.
So. I did the same with numbers, so that's
well
fun.
Reed,
we're all done.
Yeah, you're gonna have to finish this. I have orders from my doctor that I am only to drink water, wine, and coffee.
Okay. Well, I know your doctors don't actually have any degrees, so I don't know how much I'm sure.
How about my witch doctor?
Yeah.
So I'm gonna introduce a little culture into this podcast here. What you have here is a Josh Sauvignon Blanc.
What year?
Very refreshing.
I think it's
2027. They're very hard to get.
It's got a nice smell to it.
Cheers
to that one.
Cheers, fellas.
Cheers.
Doesn't have the bite of the Bud Light.
Yeah.
Some things are too smooth.
I like a little rough edge.
Yeah, I'm getting rubber hose.
I like my women a little on the trashy side. You gotta get. So that was my karaoke song to my wife.
So Reed, tell us about this. Tell us about this case, State of Massachusetts versus Karen Reed.
It's an interesting case, and if I was going to give every detail, we'd be here for 8 hours. But essentially, to break it down, Karen Reed was dating Officer O'Keefe, and they were out one night, and Officer O'Keefe ran into a fellow officer named Brian Albert. And Brian Albert invited them to a party at his house. Well, Karen Reed didn't really want to go. She and Officer O'Keefe went to the party. Karen Reed dropped Officer O'Keefe off. She saw him. She testified that she saw him walk inside. She left, went home, went to sleep. And this was this was a late night party.
This is the after party.
Yeah, this is the after party.
After the party is the after party.
Exactly. So you're talking, I don't know the exact time. Let's call it midnight-ish, 1 o'clock-ish. Well, she goes home. She goes to sleep. Karen Reed does. And when she wakes up, her boyfriend's not there. They lived together, and he wasn't there. So she goes back to the last place she saw him, to Officer Brian Albert's house. And when she pulls up, he is laid out in the snowy entryway.
The snowbank.
Snowbank of the house. Basically where she had dropped him off. Even though her testimony said that he went inside the house, it was essentially where she dropped him off. And he was dead. So she calls 911. One of the people that was there when the EMTs and the officers got there said that the witness said that when they talked to Karen Reed, she was saying, I hit him. And then that's kind of controversial to come back into play, because there's some testimony also that says it was kind of like my cousin Vinny, in the fact that she was actually saying, like,
I hit him?
Yeah, did I hit him?
I shoplifted from this sack of suds?
She was, and she even explained that she was saying, like, did I hit him? Like, she's like, oh crap, did I do this? And so the state of Massachusetts charged her with second-degree murder. And then the local police came in and did their investigation, and it looked like she hit him with the car. And that was it.
And talk about some evidence that they supposedly found at the scene that supported the fact that she had hit him.
Yeah, and that's the key. So that's the basic rundown of what the events are when the trial is essentially starting, and the prosecution, that is their, and like I said, there's other timeline of events about Karen Reed's vehicle and where it was and driving and all this other stuff. But there was fragments of Karen Reed's vehicle, mainly the back tail light that had been busted, that were on top of the snow. And when the officers came to investigate. The problem with that is the defense team had gone and found video of her that morning leaving to go check to find out where her boyfriend was, Officer O'Keefe, and she had grazed and hit kind of like a pole when she's leaving her home, and it busted her taillight, and you can see it on the video.
So she was still a
probably
little groggy, maybe from the night before.
Absolutely. I'm sure she did something illegal, but it was probably driving under the influence. But
mundane compared to murder.
So that later was found. So how did that breaking of the taillight at her house, how did that piece of evidence wind up on top of the snow where Mr. O'Keefe was? And so all the investigators that came to the house in Mr. O'Keefe's house, and Mr. Albert's house, had all these ties to, Officer Brian Albert. And so more and more stuff has come up. And the first thing, Sean, just on that scenario, as a former police officer, former investigator, let's say that you come and, me and you are buddies, and you come to my house and I have a dead person in my yard. What are you supposed to do? I mean, do you hand that off?
Well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to run, because I don't want to be involved with you and a dead body whatsoever. But it's kind of a thing that depends on the situation and the severity of it.
Right.
If I'm a police officer and your son's bicycle is stolen, and that happens to be assigned to me, I'm not going to have any problem doing anything I can to find your bicycle.
Sure.
It's just not a big issue. If I find it, great.
Sure.
If the person gets arrested, great. Who cares?
Right.
When it comes to a very, very serious case like a murder or, a rape, sexual assault, something like that, the consequences go up, and the appearance of impropriety or the likelihood or possibility of impropriety and somebody acting inappropriately is it's going to be under much more scrutiny. So even if I came to your house and did a 100% comprehensive, thorough investigation that was buttoned up, why would I do that when the defense could say, well, this is, Reed's best friend doing this. Of course I was friends.
Let's lower those terms.
I have to work with it. But anyway, it would be much easier, should, any time that another officer from an agency that you work with is involved in anything. And we did it, when I worked.
I guess that's my question. If you walk in there, do you say, we're an officer of the court. If we go in and we have a conflict, we say, look, Judge, we can't do this case. Blah, blah. Do you do that in an investigation as well?
In something that serious, what we would do is we would probably secure this crime scene to keep anybody from going in and going out, taking evidence, leaving additional evidence, and call in a different agency, to work it. I mean, we did it as far as, if I'm in my patrol car or my, unmarked, investigator vehicle, and I backed into a car at the Walmart parking lot, we're calling the Georgia State Patrol in to work
different
the
agency,
accident.
so it's not
so that there's no impropriety
or just the view of it.
Exactly. Yeah. It's just we're going to let another agency do that. The only time we changed that when I was at the sheriff's office was with officer involved shootings and things, and there's been a lot of controversy about that, but I still think it was the good issue, or the good way to go is that we would have an incident that involved an officer's use of force, whether it was a shooting or something, and we would call the Georgia Bureau of Investigation in and put that officer on administrative leave or, on desk duty, and the Georgia Bureau of Investigation team would take months to do their investigation and basically give a green light or a red light of whether or not the officer's actions were appropriate. And in Columbia County, they did a use of force investigation team that was comprised of just a few investigators that had some seniority and were good investigators, so that we could rapidly stop everything that we were doing, investigate that case, and release the officer back to normal duty, turn everything over to the district attorney's office. But that just, shows you the standard of the agency that I was working at was, in my opinion, top of the line. The sheriff there trust everybody that worked for him. If he didn't, you didn't work there. So we were, basically to speed up the process, comprehensively investigate everything, but be able to, give the green light or red light to this was a justified use of force. This officer can go right back to work, or, sorry, this isn't a justified use of force, and no matter what, we're turning over our results to the district attorney's office.
I mean, in that case, you always have to, in our situation too, as lawyers, you have to err on the side of caution. And if you think it might be close, you err on the side of, hey, I might need to stay out of here. And so Karen Reed's defense has a lot of things, and now there's circumstantial evidence and all this, but there's a couple of big things that came out. One of their things that they're saying is that their theory is that Karen Reed drove off. O'Keefe went inside the home, and then he was attacked by the family dog, mauling his arm.
This is the defense's theory.
Right, and he was nearly beaten to death. The Alberts then dragged O'Keefe's body outside to the snowbank, and they staged an accident. Then, this is not disputed, Albert's sister-in-law Googled, I believe at 2:30 in the morning, how long does it take for somebody, or how long does it take a body to die in the cold?
Mere coincidence. Mere coincidence.
Well, just if you put them all together, this is her defense. Like I said, I've already talked about the tailgate that was already busted, and they have security cameras showing her where it was busted and how did that evidence come back to the scene, which is very strange. The detective, his name is Michael Proctor, he was put in charge of the investigation, but he had a very personal relationship with the Alberts. There was some issues of there was some kind of bar fight back in the day that was talked about. He covered it up, this kind of thing. They babysit each other's kids. They're friends. They're associates. They work together and they're friends. And none of this stuff is in dispute. Another thing is that the snowplow operator, they finally tracked him down. The snowplow operator was going through the town 30 minutes to an hour after Miss Reed had dropped Mr. O'Keefe off, and he testified that there was nothing out there. There wasn't a body out there. There was no one out there. But what makes that interesting is that when all the officers that were involved in the case and in the investigation, the defense's argument is they purposefully misled the defense team in who was actually doing the operating of the snowplow. They gave them a different company, said it was subcontracted out.
Misspelled the name some way
all the
or
witnesses.
something.
There was 4 witnesses. They misspelled all 4 witnesses. So that it just reeks of this kind of conspiracy theory kind of thing. And what really happened is, when it came to a full head, is the FBI came in. The FBI did their analysis, and it took a while. And one of the crucial pieces so far is the FBI comes in and they say, their accident reconstructionist says the injuries on Mr. O'Keefe do not match in any way, shape, or form, or would cause death in regard to how the prosecution is saying. Meaning, they're saying, the FBI is saying, there's no way that this Mr. O'Keefe died, even if she did hit him, because there was injuries in other areas, and the way he died was not, congruent with that theory.
Well, and that just to know that the FBI is involved, it's kind of like one of those things when, if you smell smoke, there's probably fire somewhere. You can't just call up the FBI and get them involved in an investigation. You have to have some pretty substantial allegations and some pretty good, at least, evidence or something that alludes to what you think is evidence to convince them to even prosecute it, or to even investigate it. Excuse me, not prosecute it. So just for them to get involved in the first place, there had to be some.
How does that work, Sean? So if you're, because I'm obviously less familiar with the criminal side. you hear FBI coming in. How does that process of even getting them involved work?
Well, the federal agencies have a very narrow thing that they can investigate, and that's based on the states being sovereign states, having their own government. We're a united nation of states, but a lot of times it has to do with there being interstate commerce involved, anything that traveled to and from outside of a state. But anytime that you have public corruption involved,
right.
Obviously, you don't want to call the Canton police chief to investigate the public corruption of his Canton police officers. So that's when you can get the FBI involved if you have some significant allegations or evidence that they just don't. Just because an officer was rude to you, you can't call the FBI and them get involved in it. But when you have some serious allegations about a police cover-up or, especially when it involves a murder, absolutely, if you've got some significant evidence that this may have occurred, they're going to jump on it.
So go ahead, Chase.
Yeah, so I was just going to say one of the interesting things to me, and I think this goes back to law school. You wonder why they're putting you through all this analytical reasoning, logic games tests. So it's like A plus B equals C, right? Type testing, and you're kind of seeing here with what the defense team is doing, how that actually plays out in a case like that, and the value of it. So first of all, it's like, all right, is there a close family relationship? The people know each other very well. The people whose house the person's body was found at,
the Alberts,
to the people that are investigating. Yep. Might that skew them towards not investigating them? Yes. Okay. Are there things that don't match up? Did they get a bunch of things wrong in the investigation? Are they trying to mislead people? Oh, and this one was just interesting to me, was that there was a tail light found, or the piece of the tail light was found on the snowbank at the scene, sitting on top of the snowbank, on top of the snowbank, when it had snowed all night.
Yep. And a snowplow had went through.
Right.
If y'all have ever seen a snowplow,
it kicks stuff
it
up.
is angled to push the snow out.
But Sean,
of the
you
road.
you're what, born in Wyoming, right?
Montana.
I'm sorry. So you're well versed in at least a snowplow.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, I mean, in most of the places they use snowplows on the highways in Montana, but everywhere else you just drive on the snow.
Sure.
But I mean, it just follows that either one of two things happened, right? If that happened at the time he was hit and he died from exposure and it snowed all night, then he should have snow on him, okay? All the items around him should have snow and accumulation on top of them, and there in the perfect for everybody to find is a pristine on top of the snow piece of the tail light, which of the person who they're trying to pin this whole thing on. So like you said, where there's smoke there's fire. I think these lawyers from the get-go picked out that as a significant piece of evidence that maybe these lifelong friends of this police officer are doing some favors. And I think there were some phone calls too that were investigated.
There were. But one thing I want to get to before that, and I'll ask y'all that in just a second, but one of the things that I've kind of grew up with, my dad being a district attorney for so long, I don't do criminal work, but I would always hear him complain about other district attorneys and the way that they approached a grand jury. And so in this case, the grand jury only heard the first part of the story I told y'all, and they didn't hear any of the other evidence. And I'm not saying, because in the grand jury, you don't get, only the prosecutor gets to present. And so if you just tell somebody that a woman came, dropped her boyfriend off, he was there the next morning, and she showed up to the accident and said, I did it, or I hit him, of course they're going to stamp it yes at the grand jury. But what's frustrating to me is that this information about the phone records, the searches, all these things, that, in my opinion, needs to be given to the grand jury. Now, like my dad would always present in his mind is his case, but he would always present at least what he thought the defense's case would be, and said, listen, if you still believe this is a case that you should indict, then do it. The problem I have with the way that the district attorney in Massachusetts is acting is, if you don't present any of that, then every case is going to be true billed by the grand jury. And because of that, a lot of innocent people are going to go to jail, because Miss Reed evidently had enough money to pay a good lawyer, because this is hard work and to find all this information out. So that's frustrating to me.
Sure.
What are y'all's opinions on that with the grand jury and especially in what the district attorney should or should not present?
Well, I just wanted to go back because I want to. We're throwing around terms: true bill, grand jury. What is the role, Sean, of a grand jury in a situation like this? I mean, are they deciding if the person's guilty, or what are they actually deciding? What is that process like?
The grand jury process is really, a matter of due process, but it's kind of an antiquated system in my mind now, just because what Reed just said is that
it doesn't have to be.
The
It just
prosecutor,
depends on
the
who's
prosecutor, can just present the favorable evidence. They rubber stamp
To the prosecution,
yeah,
for the prosecution, and the jury actually, grand jury decides if there's enough evidence to indict the person. Is
correct.
that right?
It's a person is arrested. A lot of times, that's based on a standard of probable cause. That the average, normal, reasonable person, based on the facts and circumstances, would come to the conclusion that you might have committed
the
this
crime,
offense.
so you're arrested.
Then a lot of times people have a preliminary hearing where the same thing is presented to another judge, or it could be the same, judge, and that judge makes a determination then whether or not there was probable cause at the time the warrant was issued. But for felony cases, most felony cases in Georgia and a lot of other states, you have a right to a grand jury indictment. That is where the citizens that form the grand jury for that jurisdiction review the case to ensure that there's probable cause for the case and that there is sufficient evidence to move forward with the prosecution of the case.
Right.
I can second, what Reed said about his father is that, he had a lot of integrity as the district attorney.
Oh, he's a terrible human. Don't listen. No.
As far as from a criminal defense side,
yeah.
if you got to Reed's father prior to a case being indicted and said, I know you have A, B, and C,
but you need to look
at D, E, and F, and provided him that information, documentation, witness statements, he would present all of that to the grand jury. I have other cases where I've done that exact same thing, cases that are still pending now.
Yeah.
I can't really talk about, but
Sure.
where we have given information after information after witness statement, along with, certified letter to the district attorney. I know you're presenting this. Please present this as well, so that they can have a fair, well-rounded, knowledge of what the facts and evidence in this case are. And then in this particular case, you get the grand jury, which is a very specialized case because normally grand jury proceedings are secret.
Right.
But in this very specialized case, the law allows you to get the transcript of the grand jury proceedings. So in that transcript, do you think that any of the information that I provided was presented?
Yep.
Zero. Absolutely zero.
Yeah, and it's
that bothers me.
Yeah, it's
It
an important process because part of the process, the grand jury process, is designed to actually eliminate unwarranted prosecution of
needless
people
cases.
And it basically, it costs a ton of money just to have 40 people show up to get picked for a jury for a case, let alone paying all of the court costs, the judge, the bailiffs, the whole system, like paying for that. And if you have a bunch of cases that are completely frivolous, ridiculous, shouldn't be in there, right? You're just going to slow down the whole system. People get very frustrated with how long the justice system takes, and it's in part because sometimes cases like this get through.
This is eating up a ton. And another part about the grand jury that's aggravating, and it's our system in totality, is that it's this win versus loss thing. And, we're all competitive. We're lawyers. You have to be. But it's not. It's the end game for the district attorney's office doesn't need to be a win. It needs to be what's right and what's correct.
Justice. Exactly.
And kind of hiding's the wrong word, but not giving the full information to a grand jury. And as much as I hate to admit it, right now you're guilty until proven innocent. So you can be something that might and probably should be struck down by the grand jury is not. And now you have a case. Now it's in the news. Now your whole life's ruined. And you should not have even gotten to that part. And we've kind of, in my opinion, in a society, just done it. You might as well not even have a grand jury. If you're not going to present a fair and equal argument, then you just might as well say, skip it. And that's what's frustrating in this case, because I would have to believe if you actually present the true evidence, and you don't have to say anything about, you don't have to ham it up, just the facts. I don't see a grand jury allowing this case to go forward.
If they got all the evidence,
right?
Absolutely. Yeah, and that's the thing, is that a lot of people see in this day and age, I used the term antiquated, earlier, as the grand jury as not necessarily, like it's supposed to be, a checks and balance. But they see that, prosecutors, elected officials want the grand jury because it's someone that they can get in front of, and this is part of their election cycle, that they are the most, educated person in the room, explain to the grand jury how criminal process goes and what I do, and these are the cases we prosecute. But as far as, they also use it so that they can have cases kicked or no billed, which means an indictment was not given when the prosecutor doesn't want to make the difficult decision. Like when, there's a heated incident that involves law enforcement or involves possibly a minority group or something like that, where there's really no evidence that a criminal action took place. Instead of the prosecutor doing his absolute job as a neutral, and saying, sorry that I'm not going to pursue a case whatsoever that I don't believe that I could prove beyond a reasonable doubt. Well, that's because it's a political position. They can go into the grand jury, and just like they can slant a case towards favorable, they can only present evidence to the grand jury about, this is the allegation, but if y'all want to indict it, you can.
The grand jury indicted them, not me.
It's totally up to you. And then when the grand jury no bills it, that elected official has
some coverage.
I presented the comprehensive investigation to them, and they said it wasn't enough.
And some of that goes, like you said, it's a political thing where you have the elected official being maybe the district attorney in this situation, where he is trying to get something true billed to really help. And the judge and the district attorney are going to err on the side of guilty, to put it easily, because they don't want, if this person got out and did something else, then the public's going to say, well, she in this case should have been locked up, blah blah blah. But to me, it's gotten too far. The pendulum has swung.
When you say too far, that's exactly what I think about. Obviously, we don't know every single detail of this case, every bit of information that prosecutor had. Very early on in a case, when you are the prosecutor and you present it to the district attorney's office with the evidence that you have, it very well may be, this case looks like a slam dunk to me. It gets true billed, the case moves forward. But now we're talking about a case that is scheduled for trial April the 16th of this year, 2024. And the prosecutor has been given all this information. There's been court hearings about it and everything, and they are just, adamant that this is a smoke screen.
Slam dunk.
That all these arguments that are being made, it's like, do you not stop and pause and say, something's screwed up here?
It's that win-loss mentality too much, where you're into it. They're trying to win. But I also wanted to ask y'all, before we run out of time, the last thing that I thought was very interesting that's come out recently, and there's going to be more and more. This thing's ongoing. So Brian Albert, like we said, the Albert's house is where Mr. O'Keefe was found in the front yard, and Mr. Albert's sister had asked had Googled how long does it take for somebody to die in the cold. So also that night at 2:22, there was a call from Brian Albert to Brian Higgins, and Brian Higgins is another officer investigating it, and that call it either wasn't answered or it was declined. But then 17 seconds later, Brian Higgins called Brian Albert back, and that call lasted for 22 seconds. And both of those people have said that that call didn't exist until the FBI got involved and showed them the call records and showed them that if it went to voicemail, that it would have shown that it went to voicemail.
Merely an invitation to the after party.
Yes, this is after after Mr. O'Keefe has essentially been hit by Miss Reed as far as the prosecution claims. This is after that, and both Mr. Albert and Mr. Higgins claimed that those were both butt dials. Mm-hmm. And so the attorney for Miss Reed he was very serious, but obviously the room erupted a little bit. But he basically said, "I've never seen a case that had so many butt dials." He said, "Your Honor, Mr. Albert's butt was in the bed. His phone was on the table. The two could have never met." So I thought that was a good line.
Butt dial and a reverse butt dial.
Yeah. And so and then Mr. Brian Albert admitted that on the call back, his phone has either you have to do facial recognition or a passcode. It was not answered by a voicemail, so his butt had to answer it. And then
put
for
in the
17
passcode?
seconds.
And put in the passcode?
Yeah. So that those kind of things that the FBI brings are huge. And in this case, it's it just makes you wonder. At least it makes me wonder how many cases out there in our country that a good attorney or a capable attorney wasn't put on, and this wasn't found out. Because this is, in my opinion, is a clear sham job. I mean, these people
Something
that investigate,
stinks
it stinks bad, and these people meaning the officers, need to be investigated, and they need to be arrested. Yeah. Like this is. I mean, you're trying to essentially destroy. Well, you've already killed one person, and you're trying to kill the other person figuratively.
Well, I mean, and just like I'm going back to my earlier example, like. You mentioned the bar fight that was supposedly covered up,
right? And like I said, there's tons of history.
But I'm saying that
that part. Yeah,
I'm a police officer. I'm friends with Reed or Chase. Chase loves his MMA.
That's right.
Chase gets in a little bar fight. I show up and I'm like, Chase, head out the back door. Yeah. I'll get this done.
But if he killed a man.
It's a different story. Exactly. It's like, Chase, get in the car, buddy.
Sorry, buddy.
You're going to have to wait here until somebody else gets here, But it's just a matter of severity and obviously discretion was not used by
anytime, I think everybody needs to have a little grace in their life, and we all make mistakes, and I understand that. But anytime you try to pin that on an innocent person, you're the devil.
Yeah,
I mean that's
absolutely.
That's just
purely
Reed Sanders' opinion, but
that's never happened to me. I never killed anybody, whatever. But I will say it was a little embarrassing. I didn't understand what body count meant in a conversation recently, and I was shocked to find out someone saying 7 and someone saying it's like, well, I've only
0.
Yeah, I've only killed 2. What are you talking about?
You have a different definition.
No, I'm just joking. Just joking, but I'm interested to see. I think what you're going to see.
It's going to be a fun. It's going to be fun.
You're going to see some good, good legal work involved in this case with the lawyers that are involved,
and it's ongoing right now. So y'all listen, check it out. It's on Court TV. Mm-hmm. It's a fun case. It's very interesting in the regards of the different entities involved and their responsibility involved, and I think it's going to this case. Ms. Reed's case, I think, is going to be decided relatively quickly, but this case is going to go on for a long time.
Oh, sure.
I have a very solid bet that this will be a Netflix documentary within the year. This is
within the year?
Within the year. Well, within 2024.
Okay, well, are you willing to put something on that? How about a cold plunge? Will you do a cold plunge?
I'll put a million Shiba Inu. Is that how you say it, Sean?
Shiba Inu.
Shiba Inu. Shares. 1 million shares.
So 75 cents.
It is interesting that we're going to see some rulings relatively quickly on this.
Yeah, because there's motions.
By the time y'all are watching this podcast, there's going to be rulings coming out. There's
a defense. How you can do that where you don't have to wait to the end of trial.
There's multiple motions hearings that are pending. There's motions that they have filed to get additional subpoenas for phone records of these other officers that were involved so that they can see what's going on, because this is stuff that they're just getting relatively late in a trial.
So let's say, I mean, this is a jury trial. How do you make that not a jury trial and the judge to say it's over as the defense? I mean, you file a motion to
There's
motion to dismiss.
There's not really a motion to dismiss in criminal court, but you can beat a prosecutor down so much that the judge can give them the indication that
they ought to dismiss it.
Yeah. Right.
I don't know what the hell y'all are doing, but y'all need to dismiss it. In
civil work, our work,
correct. Because that's a legal, it's usually a legal standard that here's the facts and here's the legal standard, and they have not met the legal standard. What we're talking about here is a legal standard and two different sets of facts type thing. And that's usually the case in criminal cases, but they filed a motion to disqualify the prosecutor, similar to the Donald Trump thing that's going on here in Georgia.
I know they're investigating the
because they're
DA
saying
too.
this is not a neutral prosecutor. She's moving forward without
in the face of all
at least pausing.
Yes.
Not saying that she needs to dismiss the case immediately, but at least pausing to investigate. And she's saying, no, we're trying this case April 16th.
Right.
There's something wrong. She has an agenda. So there's going to be a lot of stuff in the news about this case relatively soon.
Yep.
I wouldn't be surprised if the case was postponed past April 16th, because otherwise this Miss Reed, is going to be denied her constitutional right to a fair, and impartial trial.
I'd be very surprised if after her case is over that there are not more. There's going to be some federal charges on someone.
Absolutely,
you can just see it. So it'll be an interesting case to follow, and I think it's a pretty good one to kind of check back in, and hopefully we can bring that if there's some kind of resolution and give our take on the ending of this thing.
Yeah, and I might owe you some Shiba Inu at the end of it.
I think you will. I think you will.
All right, well, that'll do it for us this time. Hopefully you learned something today. Follow this case. It's an interesting case, and we will be following up this story within future episodes. And so if you enjoyed today, please follow, and subscribe, and you'll get notifications about upcoming episodes. Thank y'all for watching.